Coming up on our newscast tonight, U.S. President Donald Trump expresses great optimism regarding the upcoming meeting with his North Korean counterpart Kim Jong-un. His top envoy for Pyongyang, while stressing Washington is not seeking to topple the regime, warns that the U.S. has contingencies in case the negotiations fail. An unprecedented memorial ceremony event is held in front of Japan's embassy in Seoul to honor Kim Bok-dong, a survivor of Tokyo's wartime sex slavery turned activist and human rights fighter who passed away this week. Millions of South Koreans are hitting the road to celebrate the Lunar New Year with their families. A massive exodus that's expected to slow down traffic at major highways. With some using the long weekend to travel overseas, airports are expected to be packed as well. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. With the second summit between President Donald Trump and his North Korean counterpart a matter of weeks away, Washington's point man on Pyongyang says the U.S. is ready to end war. But Stephen Biegun also stressed the meeting must produce tangible results, like allowing America to monitor the North's key sites. Woo Jung-hee has our top story.
Washington is ready to end the war and will go step by step with North Korea, but it wants inspections and verification. That's what U.S. nuclear envoy Stephen Biegun stressed in a speech Thursday at Stanford University. He said the U.S. is prepared to pursue the denuclearization process, quote, simultaneously and in parallel. That refers to the so-called multiphased approach that the North has been calling for, in which both sides make concessions along the way. Biegun also offered assurances that the U.S. doesn't want hostility.
President Trump is ready to end this war. It is over. It is done. We are not going to invade North Korea. We are not seeking to topple the North Korean regime. We are ready for a different future.
But at the same time, the nuclear envoy pressed Pyongyang to follow through on its commitments. According to Biegun, when U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited the regime in October, Kim Jong-un agreed to invite American experts to verify the destruction of Punggye-ri nuclear test site. Plus, he committed to dismantle North Korea's plutonium and uranium enrichment facilities, which Biegun says go beyond the ones at Yongbyon. To guarantee that the regime's denuclearization is moving towards a final and fully verified endpoint, Biegun highlighted that the U.S. needs to have a full grasp of the extent of the North's nuclear and missile programs. He added,
"We must reach agreement on expert access and monitoring mechanisms of key sites to international standards. And ultimately, we need to ensure the removal and destruction of stockpiles of fissile material, weapons, missiles, launchers, and other weapons of mass destruction."
He warned in case the negotiations fail, the U.S. has, quote, contingencies.
As the diplomatic record of the past 25 years shows, they are too numerous to count. We need to have contingencies if the diplomatic process fails, which we do.
While it's unclear what the U.S. is ready to give North Korea or what contingencies it may have, those topics are expected to be discussed further by the two sides in their working-level talks early next week. According to the U.S. State Department, Biegun is due in Seoul on Sunday for follow-up meetings with his North Korean counterpart at a location yet to be announced. Their most recent meeting was in Sweden last week. Biegun will also be sitting down with his South Korean counterpart, Lee Do-hoon. Woo Jung-hee, Arirang News.
It appears the time and location of the second Pyongyang-Washington summit will be announced very soon. On Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters people already know where it will be held and it's not any great secret. A hint, it could be Vietnam as widely expected. Regarding the time, he said it will be at the end of February. The commander-in-chief sounded optimistic about the event, highlighting the regime very much wants the meeting, adding Pyongyang seems to really want to do something. Earlier this week, an iconic figure devoted to standing up for the rights of wartime sex crime victims passed away. Today, hundreds of South Koreans gathered in Seoul to honor Kim Bok-dong, who was also enslaved by Tokyo's military, with a sending-off ceremony. Won Jung-hwan takes us to the emotional scene.
Fly like a butterfly. That was the wish of the South Korean people for Kim Bok-dong as she leaves this world. In the center of the capital, Seoul, there was a massive memorial ceremony held on Friday to mourn the loss of Kim Bok-dong, a victim of Japan's wartime sexual slavery. Hundreds of people made gestures of remembrance for Kim, who is well known for her efforts to raise public awareness of the issue. The gathering began at 6:30 this morning at Yonsei Severance Hospital in western Seoul, where crowds have been coming to pay their respects. And after that, people marched together all the way to the Japanese embassy in the center of Seoul. Emotions were mixed. It was the first time a memorial ceremony has been held in front of the Japanese embassy for the comfort women, who still have never received a sincere apology.
In my opinion, holding the ceremony in front of the Japanese embassy is meant to say that their government should apologize sincerely and compensate the victims fairly.
Even though Kim Bok-dong is gone, I think having the ceremony here conveys the message that she is still waiting for a sincere apology from Japan.
When she was alive, she strongly condemned Japan for not apologizing, often coming right here to the front of the embassy to demand that it compensate the victims for their suffering. Kim traveled to various places around the world to share her painful story. She also spent most of her later years advocating for the anti-war movement and campaigning for women's rights issues, becoming a symbolic figure in Korea and worldwide for her work in uncovering the truth about sexual slavery and for her active role in promoting women's rights. Kim's death brings the number of Korean survivors of Japan's sexual slavery down to 23. And because the remaining survivors are very old, most older than 90, it raises concerns that time is running out for them to get a sincere apology from Japan. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
Director General for Northeast Asian Affairs Kim Yong-gil and his Japanese counterpart Kenji Kanasugi held talks on Thursday in Tokyo. They discussed a range of issues, including Seoul's ruling that ordered Japanese companies to compensate the Korean victims of Japan's forced labor during World War II, as well as the ongoing threatening flybys and radar lock-on dispute. According to NHK, the two sides managed to exchange views on the Comfort Women Foundation, which the South Korean government decided to dissolve last year. It also reported that Seoul has still not responded to Tokyo's recent request for talks within the next 30 days on the forced labor ruling. A draft of Korea's first declaration of independence was made public for the first time. The handwritten document served as the basis for the country's later declaration of self-determination in 1919. Kim Da-mi has more from a special event held to mark the 100-year anniversary of the February 1st declaration.
A ceremony marking the centennial of the Declaration of Korean Independence was held at Seoul City Hall on Friday. Hosted by Chosuwang Memorial Association and Samgyun Association, the event honored 39 independence activists, as well as the February 1st Declaration, the first document of its kind asserting the nation's right to self-determination. Read out by Jo In-nae, a descendant of Chosuwang, an independence activist who wrote the draft, the statement rejected Japan's colonial rule of Korea and urged independence activists to fight against the Japanese Empire. Shown to the public for the first time on Friday, the declaration was completed in China on February 1st of 1919, exactly 100 years ago. It was then signed by Korean independence activists dispersed throughout the world, including those in Russia and Manchuria. The handwritten declaration originally consisted of 5 pages, but 2 of them are currently unaccounted for. The 2 missing pages reportedly included a declaration of Japan as the enemy and the assertion of Korea's independence from Japanese rule. Though the draft is not as well known as the February 8th and the March 1st declarations, the February 1st declaration laid an important foundation for the 2 documents that later followed, pioneering Korea's independence movement. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Koreans are getting ready to celebrate the Lunar New Year holiday. Naturally, highways throughout the nation are set to see bumper-to-bumper traffic, with people rushing to get a head start to spend time with their families. According to the Korea Expressway Corporation, as of 4 p.m. Friday local time, cars were driving at a slower than normal speed of 40 kilometers per hour on average. From the capital to Busan, it will take about 5 hours, 4 hours for Daegu and 3 for Daejeon. The total traffic volume today is expected to reach 5 million vehicles, with around 500,000 leaving the Seoul metropolitan area. Large crowds are also seen at Incheon International Airport. Starting today, the number of travelers using the country's main gateway is expected to reach around 1.4 million through next Thursday. 3 cases of foot and mouth disease have been confirmed here in the nation recently. The government announced it's doing everything it can to keep the virus from spreading. Choi Young sheds light on the preventive measures.
The government said Friday that during the Lunar New Year holiday, it'll be on watch around the clock. It'll disinfect more animals and roads near livestock farms and deliver more vaccines. The Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, Lee Ge-ho, together with the Interior Minister, said the central government is working with local administrations to contain the virus.
The government has already delivered vaccines to regions at high risk of an outbreak, and we have exhausted all avenues for disinfection.
The first FMD outbreak was reported on Monday at a dairy cow farm in Ansong, Gyeonggi-do province. All cattle at the affected farm, plus pigs, goats, and deer, were destroyed as a precaution, but a day later, a second case was confirmed in the same province, and 120 cows at the farm were culled. The third case was confirmed on Thursday, this time in Chungcheongbuk-do province, the first one outside of Gyeonggi-do. Addressing reporters on Friday, the government reiterated the measures announced earlier. These include a 48-hour nationwide ban on transporting animals and a 3-week shutdown of all markets that sell pigs and cows, effective from 6 p.m. on Thursday. The government assured people that animals that have been through the disinfection process cannot be distributed to the market, so they don't have to worry about eating them. These are the first cases of FMD in South Korea since last April. Choi Young, Arirang News.
Ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday, President Moon Jae-in rolled up his sleeve to help out the socially vulnerable. He personally packed meals and delivered them to their homes. The South Korean leader also included a letter in the hopes of sending warm greetings and love to those in need. Having heard of the difficulties faced by volunteer organizations, the president reportedly ordered his economic chief to review and come up with reform measures to help improve the circumstances of volunteers. The global economic slowdown seems to be the main reason the country's exports slumped for the second straight month in January, but there is optimism that things will pick up in the latter half of the year. Kim Ji-yeon provides a closer look.
Data released Friday by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy show Korean exports dropped by 5.8% in January compared to the same period last year to around $46.4 billion. The country's imports also slumped by 1.7% on year to a little over $45 billion. Korea had a trade surplus for an 84th month in a row of $1.3 billion. As for why Korea shipped less of its main export items, semiconductors, petroleum, and petrochemicals, the Trade Ministry cited the global economic slowdown rather than local companies becoming less competitive. Falling global demand led to a drop in the prices of semiconductors and oil, but the ministry expects those will pick up during the latter half of the year.
Exports last year were buoyed by the semiconductor supercycle, and prices rose on soaring demand among industries related to the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. But now, key IT firms such as Amazon and Intel are delaying chip orders to try and get a better price.
Semiconductor exports dropped last month by more than 23% on year to around $7.4 billion. Prices of DRAMs dropped 36.5%, while those of NAND flash memory chips decreased by more than 22%. Petrochemical exports dropped by 5.3% on year last month to nearly $4 billion, while petroleum goods decreased by nearly 5% on year to nearly $3.5 billion. By region, shipments to Korea's #1 export destination, China, contracted for the third consecutive month, mainly due to a slower Chinese economy. Exports grew, though, to the U.S. and the European Union, India, and Southeast Asia. Earlier this week, the government said support measures tailored to exporting industries will be unveiled later this month to help South Korea achieve its goal of exporting more than $600 billion worth of goods for the second straight year in 2019. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Local car companies released their sales figures for the first month of the year. It was something of a mixed bag. For details, let's turn to our Kim Hye-sung.
Korean automakers' car sales for January dropped 5% on-year to 586,000 units on sluggish overseas sales. The country's leading automaker Hyundai Motor sold a total of around 313,000 cars in January, down 7.7% from the same period last year. Its domestic sales were strong, however, rising 17.5% thanks to its Grandeur sedans and Palisade SUVs, the latter of which sold a record 5,900 units for the month. Much of the fall was due to sluggish sales abroad, which slumped 12% on-year to around 250,000 units in January, mainly due to poor demand in the Chinese market. Hyundai Motor's affiliate Kia Motor saw its sales tick up slightly by 1% on-year to around 209,000 cars thanks to its Sportage SUVs. Although its domestic sales dropped, it sold more vehicles abroad to the tune of 171,000 units, which was a 2% increase. Other Korean automakers, including Renault Samsung Motors and GM Korea, both saw their sales fall. Sangyong Motor, on the other hand, saw its sales soar 12% on-year to around 11,000 units thanks to its Rexton Sports Con SUVs. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Online shopping figures hit record highs in 2018, topping $100 billion. This is mainly thanks to growing number of people using computers or mobile devices to purchase various goods. Sobobin breaks down the digits for us.
The total value of online shopping in South Korea climbed to a new record high last year, reflecting a growing trend of people buying products online using their mobile devices. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Friday, sales conducted in cyberspace amounted to roughly $100 billion in 2018, up 23% from the previous year. Backed by the increasing popularity of online food delivery services, purchases made through smartphones soared 32% on-year to a record $60 billion, accounting for 62% of total online sales in 2018. Food and beverage items were the most popular goods bought on cyberspace, with 29.4% of all transactions being conducted online. This was followed by electronic goods at 29.2%, furniture at 28%, and cosmetics at 26%. For mobile devices, 13% of all travel and transportation services were purchased via smartphones, followed by clothing at 11% and food and beverages at 10%. In December 2018 alone, online transactions reached $9 billion, soaring 24% on-year, topping the $9 billion mark for the third straight month. For the same month, the total value of mobile transactions also jumped 28% compared to a year earlier, tallied at roughly $5 billion. Directly purchased foreign goods via online transactions amounted to a total of $3 billion in 2018, up 30% on-year. Sobobin, Arirang News.
A chain of scandals involving Hanjin Group prompted one of its biggest shareholders to take action. The National Pension Service, with around a 7% share in the group's holding firm, Hanjin KAL, decided to intervene in the company's management. Ko Ryuni gets us up to speed with the developments.
After a 4-hour-long meeting, the National Pension Service has decided to play a management role at Hanjin KAL, marking the first time the state pension operator has intervened in managerial decisions of a private firm. Since its founding as Hanjin Group's holding company in 2013, Hanjin KAL provides a wide range of services including tourism, and is best known for its subsidiary Korean Air, the country's flagship carrier. Currently, the NPS is the third largest shareholder in the company, with a stake of 7.34%. The Fund Management Committee of NPS, chaired by the Minister of Health and Welfare, announced on Friday it will use its shareholders' rights related to management in a limited way. For instance, the NPS will not be directly involved in business decisions such as dismissing its directors, but can push for changing the company's articles of association. The announcement comes after the NPS introduced a stewardship code last July as a way of protecting its interests as a shareholder. Minister Bang Neung-woo reiterated the importance of the code in Friday's meeting.
The purpose of the National Pension Service introducing the stewardship code is to raise the long-term profitability of the fund and to enhance shareholders' value. To achieve these goals, more active shareholder activities are possible.
This all comes following a number of scandals at Hanjin Group after its chairman Cho Yang-woo last year was indicted on charges of embezzling corporate funds. An economic expert warned about the potential pitfalls of Friday's decision.
The problem is that if the National Pension Service interferes too much in management, then the profitability of the company may fall, especially if the National Pension Service is pressured by political considerations rather than economic considerations.
Although the meeting's agenda included discussions on whether or not the NPS would actively involve itself in the management of Korean Air, the committee decided not to do so. This is due to the so-called 10% rule under Korean law related to financial investment services. Investors with a 10% or higher stake in a firm are required to return the trading profits within 6 months if they wish to intervene in management. This might have acted as a burden to the NPS, the second largest shareholder of Korean Air, with an 11.56% stake. 고르니, Arirang News.
A former governor of Chungcheongnam-do Province was found guilty of sex abuse by the Seoul High Court this afternoon. The court also sentenced An Hee-jung to serve 3 years and 6 months behind bars and took him into custody immediately after the ruling. In April last year, the prominent politician was indicted on charges of sexually assaulting his former secretary multiple times over a period of nearly 8 months. The secretary's testimony was initially dismissed and he was acquitted of charges before the High Court overturned the earlier ruling. An was one of the main candidates for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination back in 2017. A South Korean soldier who lost both of his legs in 2015 because of a North Korean landmine was honorably discharged from the military yesterday. Sergeant Ha Jae-hun now looks forward to pursuing a new goal in life. He's aiming for a gold medal at the next Paralympics. Lee Min-sun has the full story.
Sergeant First Class Ha Jae-hun lost both his legs in 2015 when he stepped on a North Korean landmine while on a search mission in the demilitarized zone. Doctors operated on him 21 times as he recovered, and he went on to serve 4 more years in the military at the Armed Forces Medical Command. Before he left the service, Ha had already won a silver medal in rowing. That was at last year's National Para Games in the 1,000 meter. He hopes his accomplishment will be an inspiration to others.
If I can overcome this, there will be others who will be encouraged by seeing me. That's why I try so hard.
The Army's 1st Division, where Sergeant Ha served when he was injured, hosted a ceremony to mark his discharge. It was attended by some 150 soldiers from the search unit and 7 soldiers who were part of the operation in which Ha lost his legs. Ha said he's training hard to win a gold medal in next year's Tokyo Paralympics in Tokyo and the 2024 Paralympics in Paris. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea recommended that its tidal flats, also known as Ketbul, be registered on UNESCO's World Heritage listing in 2020. The Cultural Heritage Administration said the recommended wetlands are located on the nation's southwestern coast in Chungcheongnam-do and Jeollado provinces. The wetlands make a great habitat for rare species as they boast thick layers of mudflat sediments, also making them important for research purposes. The decision over the nomination will be made next July after a thorough review by an international advisory body on natural sites. Time to turn to Michelle Bok at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, I believe the weather will cooperate throughout the Lunar New Year of Seollal holiday.
Yes, Daniel. Now we kick off the Lunar New Year holiday tomorrow under stable conditions. And although cloudy conditions will dominate across the nation, temperature will stay relatively comfortable. However, the fine dust pollution is expected to strengthen throughout the weekend, especially for the capital areas and also for Jeollabuk-do province. Now, Saturday morning will start out warmer than today. Seoul at -2 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at -7, while Busan and Jeju hit 0 and 3 degrees respectively. Now, some of the southern regions will jump by more than 10 degrees into the day. Now, Seoul rising up to 7 degrees, while Daegu and Busan sees double-digit afternoon highs. And sunny skies will be back by Monday and on the day of Seollal. However, a sudden cold snap is expected that morning, and on Wednesday, the sky will be overcast while some of the areas over in the southern coast and also Jeju Island will receive some rain. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you in tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for staying with us. For those of you on the move to celebrate Seollal, please drive safely.